Good
Woo!
morning, everybody. If you could go ahead and mute yourselves. It's great to see everyone.
Nice to see everyone. Yep. And Tina, stop trying to copy my hairstyle.
Oh, Tina, we had a discussion about this already.
Tina, I thought we talked about this.
Oh yeah, Tina, that's a great haircut.
Yeah, it looks great. It's like Patti Smith.
Yeah. All right.
I just wanted to blend in. I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this. I would like to give it back.
Too late. All right.
Yeah.
Looks like we're at a pretty good place here. Thank you everyone for your patience. Yeah. Amy, are we good?
Do you yeah, sure.
I'll let people in if you want to count us in.
Okay. I love that you always say count us in. And I love that I'm always nervous. Okay. I have so many things on this today to here we go. Let's see if I can find it because it's buried. Jesus.
Well, it's the end of the week. Now where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback, feedback, Feedback Friday.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Friday. It's Feedback Friday, episode 107. Hard to believe, but yes, 107. And great to have you here. It's finally started raining in Seattle. So we're feeling like things are a little bit more seasonal than they had been. Been a very, very dry kind of August, September, and even parts of October. So we're happy for this. Did I already say who I was? Kathy Hottori,
No.
president of Botanical Colors, and joining me from Cape Cod is Amy Dufault, who is our director of communications. And we are really thrilled to have you join us today. For those of you who are new to Feedback Friday, this is our weekly show, as I call it, where we talk with artists, scholars, historians, dyers, activists, all sorts of people, scientists who are interested in natural color and textiles. So we're really, 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 really excited that we have Anong Beam from Beam Paints here. She does much more of her art on paper, but she has an incredible story. So I'm really glad that all of you are joining us today. Before we start, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the specials that we have online at botanicalcolors.com. We have like a whole new set of Beam paints that maybe we'll talk a little bit about when Anong gives her presentation. We also have a sale on liquid dyes that ends on Monday, October 31st. We also have a sale on kind of our classic three traditional colors: indigo, cochineal, and weld. So if you've been thinking that you might want to be interested in those, they are on sale for the next week or so. So don't miss out on that. And we also launched our wholesale program, and really happy to see so many of you interested in signing up. And we've got lots of details and also can answer any questions if you're interested in joining that and getting wholesale discounts. Also, Amy and I are working on a kind of a winter indigo workshop. As the days get shorter, you know, indigo, as we often do it, is outside in the sun and it's beautiful. and the color is great. And then we kind of put our vats to sleep during the colder months, but Amy and I are going to work on a new process with dried leaves. So if you have dried Persicaria tinctoria, the Japanese indigo that you've been saving up, or even if you have dried Indigofera tinctoria leaves, we're going to give this a run and see if we can get some interesting vats out of them. So stay tuned for that. It'll be sometime in November that we'll be doing that workshop, and it'll be online. Okay, let's talk about who we're going to be listening to and just hearing some amazing stories. We welcome Anong Beam of Beam Paints. Anong says that her business is the result of a multi-generational love of pigment, paint, color, and innovation. Anong was raised by artist parents Carl and Ann Beam, and she was taught at a young age how to harvest hematite pigment on the LaCloche mountain range near her home in Chigang First Nation on Manitoulin Island. Beam Paints draws on Anong's early education in Indigenous pigment and expands it to encompass all paint traditions. We're going to talk about the progression of her craft, her love of color, and more. Amy is going to be moderating the chat after Anong's presentation, and will be, Anong, she'll be telling you the questions so you can just respond. You don't need to be reading the chat while we're doing that, because we get a lot of questions. And we'll also have everybody muted for the presentation today until the end, where we'll open it up and say hello. And finally, this presentation is being recorded, so you'll be able to view a recording of it and the chat afterward. So without any further ado, Anong, so happy you can meet with us today, and really pleased to have you join us.
Super. I'm really grateful to be here too, and really excited for the talk today.
Okay. What Kathy didn't say is I'm going to be sharing it, and
Ta-da!
I don't always do. I'm not a pro at this, you guys. So let's see. I always help people all the time. Let's play from the start. There it goes. There it is. Welcome. Now you can just kind of tell your story, and I'll just advance the slides as you want me to.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Yeah. Well, this is, wow, that's a great picture of where I'm from. I'm just on the other side of this ridge, and I was actually up at a family wedding. My boyfriend's niece got married just around the corner of this beautiful view right here. And that view is the Niagara Escarpment. So when you think about Niagara Falls, that's part of a giant geographical formation of limestone that runs like almost like a spine up Ontario. And from the falls down south, it goes up the Bruce Peninsula, and then Manitoulin is at the very top of it. So that's the last piece of the Niagara Escarpment looking north. And after that, it's all Precambrian shields, granite, and that kind of different stone to the north. Oh, that's a beautiful picture too. So it's really something, you know, I reflect on it a lot, how I became a paint maker and how tied to water my whole practice has been, including making watercolors. It definitely informs the kind of paint that we make, because we're here on Manitoulin Island in the center of, we're the largest freshwater island in the world. We're in the center of these 5 Great Lakes. We're right in Lake Huron. And then even with that water, where I am specifically in Chigang First Nation, there are 3 lakes just a stone's throw from where I am. So there's lakes inside the island, in the lakes. There's just water moving everywhere. And there's a big water course that moves right past my studio. And that's kind of led us to make a lot of lot of decisions about the materials we use, and to be really relentless with our due diligence about the safety of different pigments and ingredients, their safety in the environment. This is my dad. My dad, Carl Beam, was an Indigenous artist in Canada, and he had a deep love of Indigenous ceramic work. And at the time, there really wasn't much in the 70s and 80s, not a lot of discussion about that kind of work. But he spent that time in his career really studying pigment sources in North America and traditional pigment knowledge. I remember us driving all the time in our station wagon and driving to the paint pots in BC, and we were going everywhere we were going. He was stopping and looking at gravel pits and rock cuts, anywhere you could see the actual strata of the earth. And he taught me early on about pigment in the LaCloche mountain range. That's where we were looking for hematite. And I was probably 3 or 4. I was really small. Maybe I was 5. I was small. And we were at a rock cut, and he had his art bag. He had little bags with files and things, that rock hammers, and like a travel kit for that. And he was testing out this rock, and he found some hematite, and he brings it to my hand, and he rubs it right in the center of the palm of my hand, this red, beautiful, I can remember the color of it. And then he said, now that's pigment, because you can't wash it off. And everything else, it would just wash away. If it was just iron oxide, it would just wash away. But this real pigment is just really gonna stay there. And I felt it in my hand, and I really recognized the feel of it and the smell of it. And it was a really great childhood to be raised that way, homeschooled and going around learning those kinds of things. I remember in their trips to the Southwest, they met with a lot of Pueblo potters as well and studied with them. And they traveled to First Mesa at Hopi, and they met Dewey and Juanita Healy there. And they were ceramic workers, and they traded paint stones with my dad. He brought down a bear skin and cans of coffee and hominy corn and traded them for paint stones. And I think we still have some of the beautiful black that he got from them. So it opened my world into that. And then I kind of, as I got older, I got further removed from that. I had a difficult relationship. I had graduated high school, gone off. Many years later, my father had passed away, and I just really felt quite far away from all of that. And I really made a conscious decision to reach back towards it, to reconnect my life to that. And my children were pretty small at the time. They were 5 and 7, 5, 3 and 5. They were young. And I started taking them around to rock cuts and doing all the things my dad did with me, with them. And it really ignited a passion in me for paint making and color. I didn't really realize that that's what I was doing in the beginning, which is funny because I didn't go to school for it. And I think that there's a Western or like a colonial idea that you become able to do something after you're accredited, or you take this class and then they say, there, now you know how to do this. So I never thought of myself as someone who knew how to make paint or was a paint maker. It wasn't until I found myself looking into how to do it and ordering materials. I ordered these materials and they came, and I was holding them in my hand, and I thought, I know what this is. I don't have to buy this. because I know where I can get this, and I know how to refine this, and I know how to wash and crush and sort. I can work with this material. So that was really the beginning of my business, and it's been refining over these past years, getting kind of closer to being serviceful to people, what they're looking for, and also learning more myself of how we can provide the best paint possible to fellow artists. That's a picture of my sons there with our beehive, and we keep some bees here to help with our consumption of beeswax. We do a lot of things with our packaging for paints that use beeswax. It was one area once I started making paints, and I wanted to sell them and to share them with other people. It was really hard to get the standard little plastic half pans and just take this paint that was so physical and so natural and real to me, and take it and put it in this little plastic cup. It felt wrong, and I didn't like the smell or the sound, or the beingness of it didn't match the paint. And at that time, my workshop was in a garage that my boyfriend had given me at his sawmill. So he had all of these pieces of wood. There was so much tiny scrap wood pieces. And I started experimenting with using those, and also beeswax cotton as a replacement for traditional half pans and palettes for paints. So that's where that came from. I think something that I'm really proud of is how we keep striving to reimagine what an art supply is, or what it looks like. It occurred to me that artists are, by and large, an incredibly sensitive group of people. That they're very conscientious and eco-friendly, and are considerate of the world that we live in. As a, if you want to give a blanket statement to a group of people, and then here were these supplies that were supposed to be for them that seemed so it just didn't match. There wasn't the values that I think a lot of artists share weren't reflected in the materials. My values weren't reflected in the materials. And I started looking back at historical inspirations for being plastic free. Like when I think about my own family, where I live right here, this is our family land from when the treaties in Canada were first signed. So our family was Robinson Huron Treaty signatories. And then after that, the Manitoulin Treaty had placed us, this was our place. And so this place has technically never been part of Canada. It's like, it's its own, it's a separate kind of zone. And I'm just saying that just to like put us in space and history, and realize that it wasn't that long ago we didn't have plastic. Like there was not a lot of plastic around when my dad and my grandma were young. There was so much glass, and there was black ash, and there was metal, wood, different, those kinds of materials. So it was inspiring to look back at, my culture, and also all cultures have these different ways that they moved and carried and packaged things before plastic. And I think it's really important that we all look back into those alternatives and start to imagine, well, what is it going to look like moving forward? What does it really mean to become plastic free as a society? And for myself in the business, it was really important because I had young sons, and they were coming home at school in those years, really upset about the environment and the things they were learning about climate change. and plastic and the problems, the garbage patch in the oceans. And it was important for me to say, well, you can take action in your own field of influence, and that can, if everybody does that, it's going to help the world be a better place to take personal responsibility. So even though it's just a business, or it's just a this, or it's just a that, it's really nice to know that we're not contributing to this ongoing problem. And to date, I think we did a bit of math about it once, but we've been responsible for the, not removal, but for the lack of use of over 100,000 single-use plastics as in arts. So I'm really happy that instead of all of those little single tubs, little pieces of flax cloth have gone out, little pieces of wood. And as far as how that affects our community, it also has been really something. We see our business grow from one, supporting me and my family, which was a miracle right off of the bat. I was a single mother at the time, and I had no house. I was living on my mother's couch. And to go from that to now having workshops and supporting other community members who work with us and are learning how to make paint and doing all of the pieces by hand. We own the entire manufacturing process, from the rock in the ground to the wood on a forest floor, right through to when it shows up in a shop, or like with botanical colors. So when you buy paint from us, not only are you getting pigments that are sourced from the best places that we can find. We're really choicey about it. We work with a lot of different suppliers, and every supplier, every pigment that we use, including ones that we source ourselves, we run through third-party toxicology testing with Duke University and Cambridge materials testing. And that's really important because there are so many people who are really quick to assume, so if something is of the earth or from the earth, it's non-toxic. And I'd have to say you have to be really careful about that when you're talking about art supplies, because the earth is so powerful. It's such a giver of all things. That means that there's also a lot of very heavily toxic earth, and it's not polluted. It's just that way, that there's a lot of materials that are really potent, like cadmium, cobalt, and those are naturally occurring in the earth and soil. So it's important for us to be aware of what we're digging, where we're digging, and what we're doing with it. So all of our paints are ACMI approved for use by children, and they're also light fast. That's been something that we've really strived for with our values.
Anong,
Anong, do you want to talk at all about this picture and where this paint?
we're so
Yeah,
excited.
okay.
about this.
Okay. I'm trying to
Okay.
follow. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
That's
just gonna go into
otherworldly,
it. I wasn't
not of
sure.
the earth.
Yes, this is pretty neat. This is a meteor paint that I had the chance to make quite recently for the Royal Ontario Museum. And they have an exhibition by Kent Monkman, a Canadian artist. And it's, I think the title is We Are All Made of Stardust. And they commissioned me to make paint from a meteor. And they sourced the meteor because they're the Royal Ontario Museum. They have natural history contacts. And then they also crushed it up and delivered it to me. And it was amazing for so many reasons. One like close to my heart is that that's my namesake, Anong, Ojibwe means star. So it was really special to be able to make paint from a meteor, from a piece of material that wasn't of this earth. It was really, really fun to work with, and such an exciting kind of paint. It was really interesting. That's one of my favorite things about this. Really, is I love paint. I love making paint, and in running the business, I get the chance to meet so many different artists and so many different projects and people who have different paint needs. It's really, really interesting. I love to hear about that somebody's looking for this, or I need a paint that could maybe do that. And along the way, I'm always experimenting with different kinds of paints. I came up with a paint once that was like an oil paint, but when it dried, it was like charcoal. So it was almost like you could paint a charcoal drawing because the charcoal wouldn't actually fix into the paint. It stayed loose. So it was as though the painting had been drawn. That makes sense. It was a really funny paint.
Anong, we are so thankful that you were able to tell us a little bit of your story and how you came to paint making. So thank you for that. And we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. I'm sure people have just many, many questions about what you're doing and how you came to it. But I really loved the story that you told where you ordered paint from a supplier, and when you came to you and you looked at it, you went, wait a minute, I know how to do this. And for you, like, what was that moment like? Was it like really kind of like this? I mean, you said that you were sort of doing it and not quite conscious that you had learned so much from your father, but when you made that connection between store-bought paint and then the things that you could create, what was that moment like?
It was actually it sounds so silly to say, to think that you wouldn't know that you knew that, but it was amazing. It was really electric for me, and I remember driving out to Corey the very next day and going there and kind of testing out my assertions, and then afterwards driving back home from the quarry with a big bag of this powdered rock, and it felt electric. The whole world felt so wide open to me, and I felt so excited to get started, and I've just been pursuing those investigations every day since.
Oh, super cool. Do you
Mhm.
do you also travel off island and to other areas? And, because you were talking about your father, this is the other cool thing that, of course, I have to apologize. I'm pretty myopic about, the First Nations universe, and that you and your dad would be moving all around all First Nations peoples all over
Mhm.
North America, basically, to meet and trade and swap color. That was really striking to me, like, oh my God, of course. And so what
Yeah,
was that
and
like?
oh, it was just wonderful. I love that, and I think now post COVID, it's really wonderful to be thinking about doing things like that more and more.
Mhm.
And I remember my dad telling me, like, Indigenous people we had such extensive trade routes. They were really, if you look into the history of it, it's really, really amazing. The trade routes and the journeys that people undertook back in those days were really, really, really extensive. And I remember a story that kind of illustrates it once, where Spaniards had come to the States, and they were in the maybe like the North Carolina region or somewhere around there, and they had brought peach trees with them. So they left, and the peach trees were there. They went back to Spain, and they came back 10 years later, and they made it all the way in this time to about the New Mexico region. There was already full-grown peach trees there. Yeah, so that was something that kind of shows how fast those trade routes go. And I think that we're all still that way as well. Like there can be different oh, sorry, I have a bug bugging me. There can be these different ideas about being very limited or by the area that you're in, but I think something that a real hallmark of Indigenous culture has been the ability to absorb and create with whatever the new tools at hand are. Like it's really easy to look at, say, Indigenous beadwork, right, and say this is a traditional craft, and it is, but it's traditional as far as beads, and before beads, then it was quills and porcupine quills, and the things that the creativity keeps moving forward and absorbing new materials and processes into it.
So cool. Thank you. Amy, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you have some questions from everyone who's been listening to this amazing story.
Okay, thanks you guys. So Martha's asking, which is your favorite paint pigment color and why?
Oh. Yeah, that's so tricky, you know, it really is. My dad used to say, he said, I'm an artist, I can't afford to have a favorite color.
Smart.
And yeah, that's what he used to say, but he used to always wear pink shirts, like slightly off pink dress shirts. So I think his favorite color was pink, really. My favorite colors are probably pink and green. I really enjoy those colors. When I'm making paint, I have certain colors that are my favorites to make because of how they feel when you're making them. Like our harvest wheat color is made with a yellow ochre that is really fun to make because it looks like peanut butter. And when you're making it, it just looks like it's so edible. Everything about it says eat me. It's looks like toffee-ish or like sugar and butter. It's just very, very edible looking. I like the fall poplar yellow color. It's a Hansa yellow medium, and it's so interesting to make because that color, it's a synthetic color, and then we blend that with a hand gathered stone to kind of corporalize it or to give it a body. And it itself is almost like a color with no body. It's really, that's something that's quite common with synthetic colors. I find they're almost like a dye. They're fixed in the air without having a body the way earth colors do.
It's like a person's dream to be naming paint colors. You know, you go into like a paint store and you see all those, like, I wish I could name paints. I love when I was going through all your different paint colors, all the different names that you had, and the traditional, you had traditional kind of names on them, but also like, obviously it wasn't, well, it could have been some robin's egg and like the blue, one of the blues that I saw, but the greens were so gorgeous too. I was definitely drawn to those. Beautiful.
Yeah, naming them has been really, really something, and important for myself in that we name all of our paints in Ojibwe first too, and that just relates back to some of my own work with language reclamation and Ojibwe language reclamation. And also my appreciation of the artwork of Joy Arcan. And she's a Cree artist who's done some amazing work based on the future. It's almost a futurism. So some of her work looks like a photograph of a prairie town, and it just looks normal. But then you realize all of the text and all of the prints are all in Cree syllabics.
Oh, wow.
Like the hairdresser, the movie marquee, the newspaper box, the garbage on the, like, it's all in her language, and it's surreal when you see that. And when I realized that I had the chance to name something, it made 100% sense that it would be a physical spot to see the names of those colors written out in our language.
Love that. Uh-oh, here's another. What is your favorite binder and why? Oh.
Ooh. Well, that's funny. That's really tough to say because, you know, sometimes I have to explain to groups of kids about what paint is. And I tell them paint is really just a vehicle and a pigment. And the vehicle is what you call a binder. And it's because the vehicle takes you where you want to go. And the vehicle determines the entire behavior of the paint. So if you want an oil paint, then you're going to choose a linseed or something like that. I'm particularly fond of hemp oil, and I am doing an awful lot of work with hemp oil in paint. And I think I use gum arabic the most, and also maple sap. But it's the possibilities inherent in hemp oil that really fascinate me, and I study that a lot. That and lignin, that's quite interesting too. I learned when you look at a tree is made up of two things. There's cellulose, which is the physicality of the tree, like all the long treeness pieces, and then lignin holds all the cellulose together. So when they take trees apart to make paper, they take all the lignin out. Oh.
Yep.
Yeah,
Still
yeah. They take all the lignin out and then just leave the cellulose. So it's definitely something that there's a lot of byproduct around, and it would be great if the world could come up with some useful uses for lignin. So I poke around with that too.
So everybody, you heard it here. Please go look for uses for lignin. I thought lignin was just hemp fiber, or like the top of hemp. I know there's lignins there.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. I mean, the things that
the only thing about it is it doesn't have really great dye sites. So if you're trying to put color on it, it's hard, but it could have a completely different use anyway. So
oh,
the call
awesome.
for lignin has been made.
The call for lignin.
Lignin ideas.
We'll start have bumper stickers. We'll travel for lignin. Okay, Sherry's, I say, I love your colors and use them in my artwork. Can you tell me if your colors wear due to sunlight, or do they keep their color over time?
They keep their color over time. They're specifically chosen for exactly that purpose. And that's something that, you know, there are certain makers like Jason Logan of the Toronto Ink, who their product and their philosophy is about living, breathing pigments, and mine isn't. And it's just this, it's not to say that one is better than the other, but they're just different outcomes. And I think coming from an artist family, light fastness as a quality was something that was really kind of drilled into me as being, you know, very important. And So we specifically choose pigments based on their light fastness. And this is really interesting. We talked about this before. There's a lot to understand if you're looking for a light fast pigment. I know there's some people who will say, oh, this kind of yellow can't be light fast, or this isn't light fast, or that isn't. And I know there's some people who've said stuff about that for us, but we have pigments that are chosen for, they're exactly the same as what other makers like Winsor and Newton use. We have the same suppliers. We make paint with some of the same materials. And I think that it's to understand that just because we're an Indigenous company doesn't mean that we're not operating and manufacturing at high standards. We do, and we will continue to make very light fast, very eco-friendly products, because those are the main pillars of what we want to do. We want a paint that is going to perform exquisitely and endure, and we want to make sure that you're healthy using it and that I'm healthy making it, because I'm up to my elbows in it every day.
I know you had actually told us that story about your dad and some of the things that he had exposed himself to, and that just this idea of things that are natural, but not so it doesn't mean because everything's natural that it's good for you to be around.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that you probably know that really well from the botanical dye sense. Like there are things that you just don't want. I think when you understand your whole body as the skin being the largest organ, and that it's permeable, and that you're absorbing through your skin all the time, breathing through it, it's important that you don't that you're choicy about what makes contact with your skin.
Let's see. This is very specific, this person writes. Can you talk about the difference between, okay, hope I'm gonna say this right. Is it gouache? Is that how you say it? You guys don't laugh at me.
Yeah.
Between gouache and watercolor, and why some of your are gouache, and then I like to use gouache, she says.
Okay. This is so interesting, because when I first started making paint, gouache was not popular. And now I feel like there's been this huge resurgence of gouache interests. And actually, when I first started making paint, some of the earliest beta tests of it, I brought down to Gortzman's, and I talked with Jackie Gortzman there. She gave me some real good, tough criticism, because I wasn't quite there yet. I wanted to be, but I wasn't. And she was really frank with me. And one of the things that she said is kind of like gouache. And then I realized the basic, I've done a lot of Googling and a lot of research on it too. And basically, watercolor is a pigment that has gum arabic, and it disperses with water. That's your watercolor pigment, and gum arabic watercolor. But watercolor is traditionally transparent, and it comes from the British watercoloring tradition. And in their tradition, they privilege the use of the white paper as the only source of white, and that the skill of the painting is to leave that white showing, and to let that white be the only white and the source of luminosity in the painting. But that's only the English version of it. If you look at Chinese watercolor, they have a long tradition of using tubed white. And that's why for the longest time, when you got watercolor, if there was white, it would say Chinese white on the tube, because they were the only ones who were using white in their watercolor. And they had an incredible tradition of loading their brush with color. So they would fill the brush with white, and then load it with red, and then tip it with yellow, and then use their brush to make these incredible blends with 3 colors in a brush. It was just some really interesting technique there. So you fast forward to now, and gouache is kind of understood to be an opaque watercolor. And that's where it gets kind of tricky for us because there are some colors that we specifically make and we blend them to be gouache. So I'll have to put white into that with another pigment to make this color, like robin's egg color is a good example. But then there are other colors that just by their mineral nature, they're very gouache, or they're very opaque. Like our harvest wheat color is like that. It's incredibly opaque. You can wash it out very thin. Any gouache could be washed out thin and become transparent, but it does have the option of being applied very opaquely. And a lot of our pigments, a lot of our paints fall into that category where they have that very opaque mineral effect, like our pumpkin color is like that, our boreal color is like that. We have quite a lot.
Okay. Katie's asking, could you talk a little bit about your plant acrylic, please? What is it?
Yeah, okay. It's been on my mind a lot lately too. It's basically, it's like a kind of water soluble oil, really. And I guess why we didn't call it water soluble oil is because it's quite a clunky mouthfeel of a name. But it's using, again, I talked about my love of hemp oil. We're doing it from hemp, and we have a patented process for taking hemp oil, making it the vehicle of the paint, and then mixing that with water so that you get a paint that has a physical texture that is close to heavy body acrylic. And you can use it in paint, and you can thin it with water. You could thin it right down to the point where it's like watercolor, but it dries waterproof, and you can still rinse your brush out with water. So that's what that is. And we're still working on it and kind of building our capacity. It's an awful lot to offer different kinds of paint because it means a lot in the manufacturing process, a lot of cleaning before you go from one process to another. So we're developing our ability to offer that and to expand our line of that. And it's something I really want to keep up with because I think there had been a lot of requests for that. The people who paint in acrylics are looking for an alternative, and oil painting has always been traditionally so solvent heavy and difficult to clean up with.
Sorry about that. I was just grabbing some paint links and putting them in chat for maybe ways to start out, like a starter kit, because we have those little watercolor cards, and we also have the children's paint set too. So that might be a nice kind of intro to beam paints. I don't know if there's other ones you could suggest that you have.
Oh, those are great. The children's one too, it's specifically just called children's. We made it, we designed it thinking of kids, but really it's a great beginner's kit. And there's nothing that's a beginner about it. It's still professional, and I think that's important to say because, okay, you see this cupboard right here is my mom's cupboard, and she had a drawing in there, a drawing that I did for her when I was really little. Maybe I was 10 or something, and I did it with those Crayola markers. And in there, it had this like message about something that was your greatest mom, and it evaporated, like it dissolved over time. The drawing and the paper is there, and some of the stuff is still there, but the things that were written just evaporated into nothing. And I kept it there for the longest time because it was just a reminder, like if you have young artists in your family, you have kids and they're making you drawings and notes. If you want those to last, and all the artwork on the fridge, if you want it to last, you have to give the kids quality art supplies. You have to give them paints and that have light fastness ratings. Otherwise, these Crayola things are gonna disappear. And it's hard, I think, sometimes for people to justify giving artist quality supplies to kids, but that I think that you can foster a love of creativity so much easier with professional paints. I remember being really disappointed with kids' paints when I was a kid. I had this gold and it came in a watercolor kit. And I remember just like grinding my paintbrush around and around and around on this little puck of gold paint here, trying to work up a bit of a sparkle. And I remember being pretty disappointed with painting it out, thinking, I guess this is like, you know, dreams of gold or memories of gold. But there was like a few sparkles in there, and it's been really satisfying to make my own version now as an adult and really get that serious sparkle going.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that. We got some paints from you. It sounds so cheesy that I'm segue into this, but I know you have a lot. You have
That
the
northern
sparkle
white
paint.
palette is
Yeah.
just beautiful.
Yeah, the holiday. Yeah, I'll put that in there in a minute. I have a question and then I'll go
Oh
dig
yeah.
that. Yeah, one more question here.
Mhm.
Okay, Sarah's asking, do you think lignin, word of the day, do you think
Mhm.
lignin could be used for the binder instead of rabbit skin glue in traditional gesso, calcium carbonate water, and rabbit skin glue? So how could lignin be used for a binder? Could it
Yeah,
instead of,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it definitely could. Like what I was investigating lignin for was for something that was water soluble but eventually dried waterproof, and it didn't work like that. Lignin is a binder like gum arabic or something like that. Like it's it would bind and then it would rehydrate. So yeah, it absolutely could. I think you just have to, it would just need different testing is all. But yeah, I can't see why not.
Okay, let's see.
Plus it has a very pleasant kind of root beer like look.
Yeah.
And almost like I feel like I could smell something root beerish about it when I use it or mix something up with it. It's neat like that.
Okay, well, let's see. I think oh, okay. You know, there's some people who are kind of commenting, thank you for telling your story and talking about how you got into this. And Lauren saying, so true about using low quality children's art supplies. I've taught children's art over the years, and I've definitely noticed that they engage more deeply and positively when you offer them high quality art supplies. They really can tell the difference. So
Yeah, like I think we have a little video somewhere on our Instagram of using our sample for purple. We have a little tiny purple sample. It's like the size of an American dime. And I paint out with it and show how far it goes and how purple it gets. And when you're using the concentration of pigments to binder that we're using, you get like such an amazing explosion of color. I really love to see our kids react with that.
mm.
Hmm.
Let's see. Oh, side note, there was Kathy and I went to the Shaker Heritage History Museum in New York, in Albany, New York, a couple weeks ago, and there's this incredible planting utopia. That's what it is, based on the herb garden. Julia Whitney, hold on, I have it. Julia Whitney Barnes, and she totally was talking about how she uses your paint. And
Oh,
for
wow.
all her prints, yeah, I was like, oh my God. So I went there and I was blown away by how gorgeous these prints are that she's making using beam paints.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, I want to, probably so many people are using it. We don't even realize it, but
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really
it's neat.
here.
I when I see it out in the world, it's always amazing to me. I could recognize our color every once in a while in some of these
There's one of them
paintings.
right there.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's
Yeah.
really stunning.
Anyways, well, thank you so much for your time, joining us.
No problem.
We are going to let everybody unmute and say hello and goodbye. Anong, you're welcome to stay as long as you'd like, or
You.
Hello, hello.
Much amazing.
Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I want you inspiring.
Thank you. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anong, I was wondering, I have a question, quick question. Is
Yeah.
paint stone like how you call your little paint pieces?
Yeah.
Like,
That's
you're
what
saying
I
your
call
dad
them.
would call it that too.
Yeah, that's why I called him that. It was kind of after thinking about him and how he used paints and how it was so connected to the environment. I really wanted to share that with people so that they would feel like connected to the world through their paints, like how he did. So that's really our guiding ethos.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for talking about plastic.
Hey, Susan. I think Susan I'll forever remember you from that beautiful hat that you had on that one time. Susan had this like hemp hat on or something one time. Wasn't it hemp?
Yeah, I think probably was. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I think I
That's
got it
awesome.
in Ohio. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Super
Yeah.
cool.
Awesome.
But look into the St. Louis Art Museum show. It's incredible. It's about Mordenton. Amazing about chintz.
Oh, cool.
Indian chintz. I sent a note there. Yeah, so just Google St. Louis Art Museum, the art and fashion of Indian chintz, and you can actually see a video if you're not anywhere near the St. Louis Art Museum. It just opened. It's amazing. So look it up.
Oh, wow. I just
Yeah,
found it
all
here.
about natural dyes and
Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Put it in-
yeah, look it up. Mhm.
Putting it in chat. I just found it.
Great.
Awesome.
Okay,
Okay,
I
ladies.
am going to stop the
Well, thank
recording,
you
you
so
guys.
much for
Thank
having me.
you. Anong, thank you so much. It
Take
was
care.
really a pleasure.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Great.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.